The thing I admire most about Scott was his unconditional love for everyone.
His kindness, his selflessness, his willingness to help others.
So helpful and loving and always looking out for other people.
His gratitude. Um, Whether I was invited to a rush event or just anything help, even the smallest thing, he would make sure to thank me or thank anyone else that was helping him out. And it seems like a small thing, but it really showed a lot to his character, how kind and thankful he was to everyone in his life.
Everyone knows that Scott was an amazing person. I mean, he just would go above and beyond for all of his friends. He just always knew what to do.
Every time he saw me, and every time he saw most people, it was like it was the first time. Even if I'd seen him the day before or the week before or something, every time he greeted people, he greeted them as if it was the first time that he'd ever seen them, and he was just so excited.
To know Scott was to know the purest and fullest form of friendship.
Scott, despite everything that was going on around him, he always stayed a good kid. He always had his heart in the right place. He was kind, genuine, and he always put others before himself.
It's how much he cared for others. When he texted you how things were and asked you about your day and asked you how everything was going, he really meant it and he really cared and wanted to know how everyone was doing.
I was just blown away by how nice and friendly and outgoing Scott was. And he just went out of his way to make me feel welcome and make me feel really included in everything there.
How happy and inclusive and well-liked he made all of his friends, anybody he met, feel. Just from the time that he rushed me when I was a freshman to last year when he went just really above and beyond to make it possible for us to go to the WWE Monday Night Raw that one night. I really, all the memories I have, all the stories I have with Scott, just it's him doing what was right and going out of his way to make everybody else feel happy.
Because he really gets it. He understands the importance of getting to know people, making friends, and really trying to understand and care for people. And that's what I really admired most about him, was his compassion and his love for AE Pie and his love for his brothers and everyone that was in his life. I think he touched so many people.
And so one of the things we started doing together is working out, 1 or 2 times a week. And every time we went, each of us had a little kind of friendly gamesmanship with each other that we had to lift more. I always had to lift more than him, and he always had to lift more weight than me. So we were doing a dumbbell exercise one day, and I go up to the weight rack and get a 20-pound weight. So of course Scott comes up behind me and grabs the 25-pound weight. So I couldn't be okay with that, so I put the 20-pound weight back and grabbed the 30-pound weight. And on and on and on until eventually I was left with a weight that there was just no way I could lift. But I tried to lift it anyway because there was no way I was going to let Scott win. And I started to lift it, and it was obviously way too heavy, and so I dropped it and yet let out this super embarrassing high-pitched shriek. And the gym was really crowded that day, of course, and so everybody heard it, and it was unbelievably embarrassing. But next thing you know, I hear the same exact shriek come from next to me, and it was Scott. And he did it so it seemed like we were doing some kind of chant together, so I wouldn't be kind of embarrassed by myself, and he was willing to be embarrassed with me.
And it was the pledge party at AE Pie my freshman year, and I really didn't know a lot of the incoming brothers. And Scott got up partway through, and he made this amazing speech to all of the pledges, and it was great. And when he got down, he came up to me, and he gave me a big high five, and he put his arm around me, and he told me how excited he was to be my brother and to meet me and become friends. And Scott, at that moment, made me feel really safe. He made me feel incredibly cared about. And most of all, he made me feel at home when I was still looking for one. And I think that's what I miss the most about Scott, and that's what his friends got from being a part of his life, was feeling like they were at home when they were with him.
Scott was going to be meeting his family in New York and had about 5 or 6 hours between when we landed and when his hotel would open. And so even though I'd only met him 10 days before, I didn't even think twice about offering Scott to come over to my apartment, and we sat on my couch and he met my cats, who he reluctantly admitted weren't that bad and because they act like dogs. And he met my entire family as we ate bagels on my couch. And we reminisced about the trip and talked about how really happy we were that we had met each other and how glad we were that we now had these great new friendships to go back to Northwestern with. And I, even as sad as it is, I can't help but smile when I think about that time that we spent together, because I was so instantly comfortable with Scott, and I didn't even worry about the fact that my parents would think he was my boyfriend or anything weird like that, because I was just so happy to have him as a part of my life now, as a part in my home. And there's actually this picture that we got on birthday because we were in the same scavenger hunt group, and this is us eating halva together. And I've had this picture on our fridge and walked by it every day that I've been home, and it's a beautiful reminder of Scott and the time that we spent together in Israel, and just how happy and silly he was to be sharing this little piece of halva with basically strangers.
So he was the first person I talked to at AEPI during one of those fall Sunday night dinners. And I guess the reason I found it so memorable is in a sea of awkward and forced conversations when you don't know anyone, he found a way to make it really comfortable, natural, and just introduce me and everyone into a community that they might not know anything about. He was just so good at that. And I guess that's what I admired most about Scott also. Just how he made people comfortable by his mere presence, his attitude, his welcoming nature. And he was just such a positive force of energy. And that's just what was so great about him.
Definitely when we were kids, at every holiday, my twin and I would sit at the kids' table, and we have all older cousins, obviously, but Scott was the only one who really talked to us as if we were the same age as him, and took an interest in every activity that we were doing and everything that went on with my friends, and pretended as if it was his own issues and his own activities, and really supported us in everything that we did, whether it be dance or anything in school, any kind of activity that was involved, and he wanted to know what was going on, and he was genuinely interested in it. And every time we would sit with him, he could make us laugh harder than anybody I've ever met. Everything Scott did, my sister and I thought was the most amazing thing, and we wanted to be Scott. We wanted to be exactly like him, and I will always want to be like him.
And at one point we decided to all play roulette at the same time. We said we'll try our luck. And so what happened was we all put down on different choices. You can choose red or black, you can choose 1 to 18, 19 to 36, etc. We all chose red, except Scott. Scott took black. And naturally, when the ball stopped rolling around, it came up black, and Scott was a winner. And of course, the first thing Scott says after he wins and doubles what he had originally bet down was, hey, do you guys all want to split the winnings? And this is Las Vegas, where you just got to try your best, play your luck, and hope to take away a decent amount. And the first thing Scott thinks of is not himself or not how lucky he is, but how can he just help everyone else around him? How can he best help us?
Is when we're playing golf in the Westin Kierland in Scottsdale, Arizona. The last hole would always be very dark. In fact, it'd be pitch black, and Scott wanted to finish, and I was ready just to leave. So I'd hit my shot, I'd have no idea where the ball was. Scott would get up next and hit a booming drive and walk right directly to his shot. So I'd be looking around, and Scott was so excited to finish up, partly because there was a bagpipe playing at the end of the final hole. And in the background, there were 100 or 200 people waiting with a fire pit in the back. It was just such a great scene with the music playing of the bagpipes, Scott knowing exactly where he was going, and I was still searching for my ball. It was just a great memory that we always talked about and thought about whenever we heard bagpipes playing.
No conversation with Scott was cursory. He wasn't asking you how you were doing to just be polite. He genuinely wanted to know. Scott deeply cared about the people that were around him, and it showed.
Is a memory I have after his freshman year at Northwestern when he came to my house, my parents' house, and we just chilled and watched Jeopardy together, which I had only learned then was something he also did growing up. And it was a kind of a tough time for me, but just sitting there with Scott, like watching Jeopardy, being nerdy. I don't know. It was just the kind of instance where you could feel at ease just being with someone, which is something I think really stand out about Scott. Is just he's always able to make you feel comfortable and warm and loved.
Basically, the only time I ever got mad at him, he literally bought me flowers. Like, who does that? He always made everyone around him feel included, special. It was so easy to connect with. Everyone I've introduced him to only ever had positive things to say about him.
Hey, this is Will at Wings Over. I'm with Dan and Sean. I have a lot of fond memories eating at this fine establishment with Scott.
When he was 15 years old and I was going into college, and he offered to take my online math assessment for me. And he took it and passed into the highest level college math you could pass into as a 15-year-old.
Recently, a few weeks ago, taken the train with Scott downtown, and his family jokes around that he's not a morning person, but we got on the train together, and he turned 2 chairs so we were facing each other, and we talked the whole time, him giving me advice about the upcoming school year and just joking around. And then after the train, he made sure I knew where I was going, and I know he would have done anything for me, and I know that that's something truly, truly special.
From the very first day, he treated me like I was the most interesting person in the room, and I just never was. He treated me like I'd known him for his entire life, and really, we had just met. It didn't matter to him who I was or who anyone was. He just unconditionally loved them. He's a person I look up to and I try to emulate. I'm constantly trying to have just a fraction of the kindness and love he radiated.
When he and Daniel came over to watch the Be Amazing Eat Chili's takeout, I fell asleep before I had the chance to say goodbye and woke up to an apartment cleaner than I had ever seen it, and a text from Scott thanking me for the great time and apologizing for eating my cold leftovers. He said he had cleaned up to compensate.
One of my favorite memories of Scott is after we dropped him off at college at Elder Dorm, and we had to talk to Scott the first week, a new student week, and finally we called him the second week, and he was so excitedly said to me, "Mom, we are impressed and amazed at both the quantity and quality of the parties here."
Knowing Scott made every day at Jusos High School just a little bit better, a little bit brighter, especially for me. There are a lot of not nice people in this world, and Scott was always the most genuine, the most sincere, the funniest, and he just, like, talking to him, he just made you feel important. He was generally interested in you, and you were generally interested in him. He was the guy every single girl wanted to marry someday, and I owe a lot of my high school experience to him.
This summer I turned 21, and when we were at the bar at night, Scott made sure that the DJ announced it was my birthday and wished me a happy birthday over the microphone. And he was like super excited about it, and it was like the nicest thing anyone has ever done for me. And that's just like what I miss most about Scott, is that he just would do anything for his friends. Anyone, really.
I had never been skiing before, and I heard Scott was going, so I decided to go. Once we get there, I put on my skis, and I'm just very scared and very nervous. But Scott is there standing by my side, giving me tips, calming me down and motivating me. And then he spent that entire first day with me on the bunny slope, just teaching me how to ski.
The last conversation we actually had, I was looking through my messages, was how right after school ended, he knew I was going away for the fall. And he just kept texting me, kept talking to me in the days leading up to it, like finding some way to meet up that last night, literally at like 2 in the morning, for to hang out, for him to say goodbye, because he knew I wouldn't be back for the fall. And just stuff like that made me feel so good, made everybody he interacted with so good. And the last text that he sent me was just saying that he couldn't wait to hear all the stories I had from abroad when I came back.
For those of us who knew Scott well, we would often describe him as a human golden retriever puppy. And nothing would put quite as much of a smile on my face as when I would wake up in the morning to see that Scott's tagged me in a puppy video or on Instagram or Facebook, especially if he knows I've been stressed or I was having a bad day.
I remember we were in a very heated competition, and I'm pretty sure me and Jake were whooping your ass, and we started kind of taunting each other and having fun with it. And that's when I started calling you Scotty to try to psych you out. I'm pretty sure you ended up coming back and kicking our asses, but...
And to get his signature, you had to beat him in a game of basketball down in the game room. I remember I came close to beating him, but he ended up winning. But right after he won, he looked at me and said, "Oh, don't worry about it. I'll still give you my signature. Just stop by at dinner tomorrow." And I mean, that was one of the things I admired most about Scott, was just how kind he was and the ability to put himself on people's shoes. I mean, he always put others in AE Pi before himself. And I mean, some of the other guys and I were talking, I don't think there's a nicer guy in AE Pi or a guy who was more admired than Scott. And I think every brother can probably agree with that, and every person who's ever met Scott can probably agree that he's the nicest guy they've ever met.
We got him on a party bus and went to the Alice in Wonderland concert for his birthday. And I just remember there was just like this perfect moment where, there was like the light just shined down on us, and then everyone started saying happy birthday, and this huge guy just like hoisted Scott in the air, like right at the exact perfect moment, and just the look on his face was just priceless. It was just like the happiest probably I've ever seen him.
Scott's greatest act of camaraderie to me was a heart-to-heart we had sophomore year. He didn't have to, but he kindly shared his own experiences with mental health with me, because he wanted me to feel less alone. That was Scott, always trying to make others feel comfortable, even if he himself couldn't feel that way. To know Scott is to feel like you belong somewhere. I didn't fully appreciate that until now, when I see how tough it is without him.
I loved growing up with Scott. He was the best cousin to the point where you could call him a brother, and I have no brothers. He was the closest thing to it. I loved every time I got to see him, even when he went through his rough stage where he would try and beat me and my sister up. Even then, he was so sweet and caring, and I think that I admire that most about Scott was his never-ending love for everyone and everything. He was the most optimist boy person I've ever met, and I love admiring him. I want to be him.
He always had a funny remark or a sarcastic comment or a silly Snapchat face, and he was just always so genuinely concerned about how you were doing, and he just wanted to hear about those mundane, random little aspects of daily life. And if you ever said you were less than 100%, he would do everything that he could to make you feel better.
He was just such a special individual. I was a senior when he was a freshman, so I didn't have as much time with him as probably a lot of the other people in the room. But, the time that I did have, he was just a really genuine person who I think really made it a point of bringing people together and bringing a lot of joy with him wherever he went.
Some of my favorite memories were this last summer when I got to spend Dillo Day, Lollapalooza, and a few other nights in Chicago with him. It was always great when he'd invite me. We'd go out drinking. It was always a fun night with him, and those were some of the best memories, along with countless others when I was young.
I think the reason why everyone liked Scott was because he had just this way of being genuine, while at the same time you know, being able to connect with everyone. You know, usually you think that those two are at odds with each other. Like you're either like, you know, you're either genuine and like there are people who you know, piss off, or you're just, or you know, you're like, you just like get along well with everyone, but you're kind of fake. But somehow he was able to bridge the two together so that everyone, you know, had a real connection with him, and somehow nobody disliked him. So, you know, that's obviously what I'm going to miss the most about him.
Going through the college process, Scott was the first person and one of the only people that I really told about how stressed out I was, and he said, whatever you need, I'll help you 100%, and no matter how busy he was just so willing to help me, and that's a quality that I hope I can pass on to my family and my friends, because I hope that I can be half as amazing of a person as he was.
Scott took care of his friends and was kind to strangers. His acts were never out of obligation or necessity, but were acts of love. In this way, he taught us how to live. We will always miss Scott and know that our lives have been forever changed by the gift of his friendship.
Scott was a friend that anyone was really lucky to have. And we're really gonna miss him. I'm really gonna miss him.
Yeah, it was just a great time, all those late night meals and shenanigans that we were up to, and I'm always gonna be thinking about you.
Going to miss Scott. And I'm gonna miss his laugh and the way he calls me now. And the cookies we make together every year for Hanukkah. Life will not be the same without Scott Boorstein, but my life is better because I had Scott Boorstein.
You made such an impact on so many people's lives, mine especially. I love you now and always.
You're always going to be in my mind and right there in spirit. Thanks, buddy.
I love you, Scott. I'm thinking of you always. We miss you.
No one can replace him, and that's really all I can say about Scott.
We'll miss you more than words can describe, and we'll always keep you with us in our hearts and minds. Rest easy up there.
Think about you all the time, and I'll always remember you.
Scott, we miss you and we love you.
And I will always love you, Scottery Barn.
I will always love you and miss you.
And I'll miss him every day.
You will truly be missed.
And we love you very, very much.
Scott, you will always be with us, no matter where you are. We love you and we miss you.